another episode of GorillaCast. I'm in the studio today with Mika Jordanov from Revenue Ops. Welcome, Mika.
Hello, good morning, and thank you. It's good to be here.
In the previous episodes of GorillaCast, we've talked a lot about the early path of startup companies trying to find problem-solution fit and then going to product-market fit and from on there. And in all of these different phases of building a startup company, one topic, which is sales, is often brought up, and we thought that it would be good to do a full episode purely focusing on early stage company sales, and that's why we've invited you here. So could you start by telling a little bit about what sales actually means in the context of early stage startup companies?
Well, I don't think changing the context really changes what sales is about. Sales is about making buying easy. So, but obviously the actions inside and what you need to do in order to get sales, they vary heavily based on where the company is at and how early the company is on its path. Especially if you don't really know if you're fixing a concrete problem, the same laws in sales still do apply, because you're going to have to reach out to a customer. You just might not have a ready product or a ready solution to sell or a service to sell, but you're still going to have to reach out to a customer, but you're going to have to ask for the time with a different approach. You're going to have to ask to kind of have help from the customer to evaluate what we're doing. And it's a numbers game, just the same. You'd rather want to speak to 20, 30 customers than just one or two. And the one really important question in those first early contacts would be, are you willing to pay for this? Is this something you'd be willing to put money into?
Thanks. You mentioned there that selling is essentially making buying easy. So what goes into making buying decision easy for a customer?
A lot, as you probably guessed, a lot. But I think you should start from putting yourself to the customer's perspective, to the customer's side of the table, because especially in Finland, I know this is a common joke, but we kind of tend to over-engineer, over-develop the stuff that we sell. But you need to step into the customer's shoes and see what kind of, first off, point of view you're presenting to them about what you're trying to solve for them. And secondly, how are they used to buying stuff, services, products, whatever else? And then kind of navigate on from there. But the best way to get started on it is to go out, be vulnerable in front of the first 20, 30 contacts, and just explain to them that we want to try to fix A, B, or C. How do you feel about it? And then get the first feedback. And the golden advice that I've gotten was to kind of have this, whatever you want to call it, first customers group or whatever, where you have this 20, 30 people who kind of like the idea, they're willing to pay for it, but you kind of also ask them for a little bit more than from a typical customer. You ask them for feedback, not just from the early stages on, but from the early customer journey onwards to maybe for the first year, the second year, the third year. Kind of these ambassadors. They will help you with that customer point of view to what you're selling.
Very good. You also mentioned now already a couple of times that what the first step is to get in front of 20 to 30 customers to talk about these things. So how do you do that? How do you get in front of 30 customers?
Yeah, repetition is the mother of all study. So that might have been on point. But for me, and I really do not see any other easier ways to really just pick up the phone and call. Ask for a time. Hey, we have this new thing. We're pretty sure it's solving this and this. It would be lovely to have a 30-minute chat and just to hear your feedback about it. So take a list, you pretty much, you have to know something about what you're solving already, right? So especially if it's B2B, you're going to have an industry. So select an industry. Don't go into too high companies because they're probably just going to go, yeah, this sounds fantastic. Wow, yeah. And you're going to have a kind of false positive feedback from the customer. Go into the mid-level companies, let's say 10 to 100 employees. You're probably going to hear the best feedback from them because they're already in the business. They've grinded out. They've started out. They're not too big. And they're probably going to have the most empathy towards you as well.
On that point, if we talk about prospecting, where should a founder start if they have zero leads, if they have no process in place? How do you find the customers and how do you approach them?
Well, Google, obviously, first, and ChatGPT, whatever you want to use. And it's going to tell you that there is fantastic things called prospecting platforms. Obviously, Vainu, Phonecta, there's a lot of places to find company data. And obviously, they are paid services. But like, why not ask? Because obviously, if you're starting a company, there's a good thing that you're doing. You're a potential customer to them later on as well, right? So why not ask for a list of 20, 30 companies? Just like, hey, I'm trying to find these companies. Could you like give me help me out? They're probably going to get mad at me for saying this, but I'm sure they would. Because why not? Why not? It's in their best interest as well. And start on from there.
All right. So we're now in a situation where we've started a company. We want to get in front of 30 customers. We're doing the research. We're trying to find them. We're trying to pick up the phone, call them, and have them. All of this takes a lot of time. So how do you structure your calendar and how do you manage time when there are 100 of other things you should be doing as well as a startup founder?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I actually just yesterday I was coaching a company on the importance of sales as a role. And it's not something you do on the sidelines. Obviously, when you're founding a company, you don't have the resources to recruit a sales rep and start, fully doing sales every day of the week. But then we go to the calendar and we have to map out the best time slots for that. And I would advise to split it into basically 3 sections. One is prospecting, second is contacting, and third is meeting. And I'm not just talking about first meetings. It's all the follow-up meetings. It's all the recurring meetings. It's all even the current customer meetings. Put a time slot to it. The prospecting, you don't need a time slot for every week. Do one solid list and you may need to update it once a month. That's fine enough. But then you do need a weekly time slot for contacting and for meeting the customers. And there's 2 reasons for that. First off, most of the times people do not pick up the phone. So you're going to be doing it over and over again. Secondly, you need to stay in shape in that. It's exactly like training. You can't go to the gym once and expect to have muscles that'll last. You need to do it every week. The same thing with sales. You need to repeat it every week so it kind of stays on you. You remember the agenda that I have to be doing this. And if I go into more specifics, I would maybe choose Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Friday afternoon for the contacting, one of those slots, whichever feels the nicest. And for the meetings, doesn't really matter. I mean, the meetings are scheduled in multiple time slots. But the point is that the meeting time slot is more meant to guide you, not the customer. And it's really hard when the customer, let's say you've put your time slot for meetings on Thursday afternoon from 12 to 4, and the customer wants a meeting on Wednesday. Are you going to take it or not? Well, my advice is if you have a ton of other stuff to do, don't. Ask for the next week. It's still going to be a meeting. It's still going to be as good as the previous meeting or the previous time, but you're going to stay on top of your calendar, and that's the essential.
Based on your experience and having worked with a number of early stage companies, how much of the time you've kind of alluded to it, but if we put it in really concrete terms, how much of a founder's time should you devote to sales related activities in a week?
Well, obviously I want to say as much as possible, but there are realities that kind of trump that, obviously. But the first division should be what are time sensitive tasks And I mean time sensitive in the sense that they have to be done and they are preferred to be done in a certain time of the day. You don't need to bill customers, for instance, on between 8 and 6, but it's a better time to meet customers between 8 and 6. So that's the first. What can you do in the late nights, on the weekends? You can't call customers on weekends, but you can call customers on Monday mornings. I would advise you to go on Tuesday mornings. So that's the first step. And you're going to find out how much time you need to it, but don't go out less than half a day. You're not going to succeed if you schedule less than half a day. You're just not. A full day is required. I'm not saying it needs to be one full day, but the hours of one full day is the absolute minimum of each week. If you want to get the product out there, if you want to get the feedback, if you want to make the sales, you can divide it in any way you want. And plus, obviously, each month you need to do the prospecting, because if your list has exhausted, you don't have who to call. And the even more important than how much time, how long in hours or minutes, is what's your goal for those sessions? How many companies do I need to have on the list when I'm prospecting? It's not about making calls for 2 hours. It's about how many meetings did I get booked into those 2 hours. Sometimes it works out. You make 3 phone calls and you got 3 meetings. Fantastic. Go work on other stuff, right? Sometimes it's 3 hours. You make 150 phone calls and you make 1 meeting. So it varies heavily, but you need to have the time slot and it needs to be like dedicated to exactly that action.
You've talked already about sales being a numbers game. Can you open that up a little bit in terms of when you look at sales, how do you break down?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody who's talked about sales who hasn't touched on that subject. But I mean, it's a numbers game in the sense of there's a lot of laws in sales, but there's also a lot of realities in sales. What I mean by that is a very concrete example that actually Mikko Honkanen from Vaino once opened up, was that there's no point in counting for instance, from calls that you've made out, how many people answered, because you don't do anything with that metric. The only metric you can influence is how many calls you can put out, right? So yeah, it'll give you some sense of the quality of the booking call, but in reality, it really doesn't. And the same thing with kind of looking onwards. I like to refer it to training, because the same thing applies. You cannot start to run a marathon by deciding that I'm going to jump into a marathon that's happening tomorrow. You're going to have a plan. First, you look at how many months do I have to train, right? Same in sales. How many months of, let's say, leeway I have from the bank that I have or from the funding that I got. When do I need to be solvent, right? That's the first goal. And then you kind of backtrack from there. And then you start calculating, what's my price point? So how many meetings do I need to have? And then there's like these typical laws that you apply. From first meetings to a deal, a good number is 20% and everything above it. And if it's less than 20% of first meetings into deals, you would want to improve that, I mean. But you're not going to have 20% when you're starting a company, obviously. So the number needs to be high up. And that's where it kind of comes from. There's no one answer to kind of rule them all here, but you need to calculate it from the target that you want to reach and backtrack it from there. But there are minimum numbers that I would say. If you're not making at least 5 phone calls a week, you're not really doing anything. I would say a safe number would be 20 phone calls a week. You're going to be in really good shape if you do 20 phone calls a week. You can do 20 emails a week as well. You can do 20 LinkedIn messages as well. But the call is always the best. And yeah, quote me on that.
Let's get back to kind of how to structure and follow the numbers game and how to manage your sales pipeline a little bit later on. But I think one of the elephants in the room is that your first advice and smart advice is pick up the phone, make the phone calls. There are very few founders I have ever met who enjoy making those phone calls. For most of the people, it's one of those things that you want to push away because it's not in your comfort zone. So I think it would be really helpful for founders to get some guidance as to how should you do those and what goes into a good outreach call.
Yes, I love talking about that. First off, I'm going to use the minds of the founders and anybody. Nobody likes to make the calls. Nobody. I mean, even sales reps despise that. Well, okay, despise is a strong word, but I don't think anybody really likes that. I'm a bit crazy. I do like that, but I don't love it. Nobody loves it. I mean, because you're always putting yourself on the line. But actually, I'm gonna quote what a customer once said to me. In 2011, I started out at Groupon. It was from a really small physiotherapy place in Vantaan. And I had been sweating behind the phone for, I think, 3 or 4 days. It was the first time I was doing telesales. And I was actually tremoring. And I finally, I think it was the 3rd or 4th day, I made the call. And I started mumbling on the phone, and the woman on the other end started laughing, but like kindly. And then she just said something magical that I've used ever since to talk about this. Mika, just tell it to me like you'd tell it to a friend. And it kind of reset me right there on the spot. And I went like, okay, well, we have this thing where we present companies and blah. And then she said like, yeah, that makes sense. I'd like to try that. I'm like, okay, so I don't know what happens next because I'm going to send you a contract or something. I don't know. Can I call you back and when I know? And she was like, yeah, sure. So the customer is as surprised off the call as you are, which means you're on the same level. So obviously it's always a bit scary because you don't know into what kind of moment you're calling the customer to. But then there's these tips and tricks and best practices you can do, which is stay on point, don't blabber. And the golden kind of structure of a pitch is who, from where, why, and then when. Which means if I would call you, you have my number saved, right? You would see the first 2 things. You would see who and from where. But the first thing you're wondering is, why did I call? That's the first thing you're wondering. Same thing when your dad calls you, when my mom calls me, anything like that. A friend calls us. The first thing we're wondering is why they called. So tackle that head on. The first thing you say is, hi, this is Mika from company X and Y. I'm calling you because I'd actually like to meet. Fantastic. Everything has just dropped down and you're on the level of discussing, should we meet or should we not meet? And then, since you might not have a pitch yet, you might not really know what you're doing yet, you're going to say, we have a company, we have this thing, we're trying to solve problem X, Y, and Z. I would love to hear your feedback on it. Could I maybe lend your ear for 30 minutes? How does next week's Thursday or the Friday sound? And the only kind of technical thing there was that I added the how does next week's this and this sound. And the next thing is obviously the customer's going to ask a question, and there's no tips and tricks into how you answer the question. Answer fully, answer honestly, but just add, this is exactly when I want to reach out and have the moment to discuss which one would be better, the Thursday or the Friday. Because in a phone call, you're not in control. In a phone call, if they pick up, you need to be on the point, you need to be relaxed, and you need to get to the point as fast as you can so you can start talking about it. Is it a good thing or not? So now you're just asking for a meeting, you're not selling. And because you're not in control, the customer can at any point go like, hey, sorry, I got to go, bye. And you're like, my pitch isn't done, right? So get to the point really early on, speak to, as a friend, who, from where, why, and why is always the I want to meet you, and then suggest the times. And when the customer asks something, you reply fully, honestly, truthfully, but you just add, this is exactly what I want to meet about. Which time works better for you? So,
very good. Sounds simple and easy enough.
right?
Now, and I said, I felt it myself, and as I said, having worked with a number of startups and a number of founders, this seems to be there are plenty of tasks that people don't like. This seems to be one that is even more difficult to get to than most of the things. So if we think about the psychology of cold calling, why do you think it is so difficult? Does it have to do something with our kind of natural fear of rejection, or what is it that's holding people back?
I think it's that. I think it's in the past 5-10 years, we're not that used to phone calls anymore in general. Like you'd rather text your friend even. You'd rather text your spouse or your partner than call them.
Yeah.
Which is insane, to be honest, because most of the discussions or the conversations you have, even with your best friends on WhatsApp or wherever, would have been a simple 15-second phone call, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. My guess is as good as yours. But we do know that it's a thing. It's a myth. It's a stigma. It's a taboo, whatever you want to call it. So that gives you an advantage. If you're the one who makes the calls, you're already ahead of others.
Very good point. I know it depends on a number of factors, but on average, what would you say if I make 10 cold calls, how many meetings should I get out of that? One.
Yeah. Just for 10 pickups, you're going to get one.
Yeah.
If you get 2, you're lucky. If you get 3, you're go fill the lottery on that day.
Yeah.
And that's due to many things. Like people don't answer, you might have the wrong number, they might not work in that company anymore. The most obvious one is that they're not going to answer. And that also brings you to one really simple thing. Don't ever prepare for a phone call too much, because the chances are they're not going to pick up. The most stupid time to use is to kind of, okay, I'm going to look at their website. I'm going to, this is what I'm going to talk about. Let's look at the financial numbers. Yeah. And you used 15 minutes to prep to one phone call and then they don't answer. Why would you do that? Just make the call. And while you open the line, then open the web page. Start browsing. So you have something like in the background. Yeah. If they pick up, you have talking points. And one pro tip, recruitment ads actually offer the most on time and the most on point information. And they typically contain information that the company website doesn't, because obviously they want to sell the company to the people who are trying to apply there, right?
Yeah. So as you're saying, okay, 1 out of 10, you're doing okay. 2 out of 10, you're doing great. 3 out of 10, you're in a league of your own. So essentially, anyway, I guess one of the takeaways is you're going to get more rejections than you're going to get meetings. So you better just get used to that. And it's nothing personal. It's just you need to get through those rejections in order to get the meeting. Yeah. It's actually funny. I used to have a colleague years back who was exceptionally good at cold calling, and he would usually get 7 meetings out of 10 calls that he made, which was brilliant. But it actually led to a point that there were a number of meetings there where the customer had absolutely no need to meet, but because he had just been such a good caller, they had agreed to a meeting, and then somebody spends their time, goes to a meeting, and then realizes that, well, this meeting should have never happened. So in that sense as well, if you get too good at it, it's not always a positive either. So as you said, keep it simple and do it in a way that, yes, if the customer feels that they have something to contribute, they will take you in. If they don't, that's it.
Precisely so. And if I may, there's actually a bigger theme there that you just mentioned. I've seen that as well. I've worked with phenomenal phone workers. Like, where I feel when I look at them working, I feel like But that's like there's a big subject there, which is focus on delivering something. Focus on delivering something. In the call, you're delivering why you should meet. In the meet, the only purpose for the meeting is to try and find out if this is something somebody is willing to pay for and how much and why. And if you keep that focus from the early on in the sales process, you're going to stand out throughout the whole sales process. And the often very overlooked fact is that the way you handle the sales process, the more systematic and the more on point and the more focused you are in the sales process, that's actually building the image towards your company as well. That's building the image towards your offering. Because if you walk into a Porsche dealership, they're not going to mess up the process of saying hello, walking you through it, right? The process is gold.
Mm.
If you walk up to any, let's say, random small car dealership, that's not going to be the same thing. And you have that image then for all of the cars that you see on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important throughout the sales process to remember that the way you handle the sales process, that's the first impression that the company gets of your company.
All right, so we've gone through the most gruesome and difficult part. So you've made the 10 phone calls, you've got that one meeting, you're getting ready to go to that meeting. For an early stage company where, let's play the scenario, as you said in the beginning, you've got some idea of a product, you might have some early prototype, but you're still in the investigation phase of trying to figure out what you should be doing. Talk me through kind of some of the most important things from that first customer meeting. What should you focus on and what should happen there?
Same things as when you have a product, when you're ready, when you know what you're selling, same things. There's 4 things to a meeting as well. The first one being timetable. You need to concur that. Okay, hey, we have 30 minutes. Is that still okay? Do we have a hard stop then? Right? Okay, cool. The agenda today, I want to briefly get to know your company, and then I'm going to explain, like I said on the phone, that, hey, we have this and this, and I want your help on it. The most important thing, the why of the phone call, is the goal of the meeting. And you need to voice that out. And this is the hard part. This is really hard. I've coached this to really seasoned sales veterans, and they have a hard time saying this. But this will, in the same way as in the phone call, the why, which is I want to book a meeting with you, will lay out the guide of the conversation in the call. Setting the goal and voicing it out in the beginning of the meeting is crucial. And the goal is, today, the goal is that I understand, do we have a product that would help you?
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. And you might be more blunt when you go forwards. I went ahead and tried in Vaino actually, and I said the goal of today is to get you to be our customer. Mm-hmm. And it typically had that reaction. Exactly. The customer started to smile, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in the way you present it, obviously. So you need to have a kind of humor on that but after that, you can kind of soften back up. Mm-hmm. So I want to make a customer out of you. So help me understand your business so I know if I can be of help or not. Mm-hmm. Help being the key phrase here. That's really easy to use because you want to know. That's essentially what you're doing. You want to know if you're able to help. And I think it deploys empathy in the other person because you're actually there. You're putting yourself on the line because you want to try to help. And there could be jokes made that if empathy is not received, once you say help, run from the meeting. And then the fourth step in the meeting is next steps. Even if you don't have next steps, you need to sum it up and say, hey, I'm sorry, we couldn't help you. There wasn't anything I could find. I'm not going to follow up on you. You're going to feel at ease. And you're going to feel you're going to want to refer to me, even if I couldn't help you. Mm-hmm. You're going to come up with what? Wow. So you're not going to be calling me every week asking for business? Yeah. No. There's no business to ask, right? No. And you're going to remember that.
Very good. So let's talk a little bit about pipeline management and related tools. So if you're a founder, you've started your new business, you want to be efficient with your sales and follow your process, what's the minimum setup you need in order to be able to be successful?
Minimum setup, Google Docs, Excel sheet. You don't need anything else. If you want to do it systematically and a little bit better, basically any cheap CRM. My favorite, I'm biased here heavily. My favorite has always been Pipedrive. The first time I used it was in Vaino back in 2017. But it is really, really good. It's simple enough because you're looking at a pipeline view, and you only need 4 stages in a pipeline, by the way, ever. But then you have a pipeline view. You always log into that view. You always see what's red, what's green, what's yellow. I like that. That works for me because like traffic lights and all that. And then you have the task lists. And ask me, email me, whatever. We don't have time to go into the details here, but there's a really, really fantastic way into using Pipedrive's task list to be really effective in calling. Mm-hmm. But the point is, any call list should have name, number, company, and then a slot for the email. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. The added value would be if you've looked in, when you've done the prospecting, you've put into your call task or your sheet, one phrase on why you're calling exactly them. One phrase is enough. Because that one phrase will remind you, while you're looking just at the list, about what the company was about. It's going to remind you of the website visit. It's going to remind you of the moment, hey, yeah, okay, this is why I wanted to call them. So you don't have to jump between tabs and go here and go there and that. So the list needs to have all of that and those 5 things. That's it. You can do the calling anywhere.
Yeah. I think the funny thing, having worked with startup companies, having worked with corporations and companies of all sizes, oftentimes when we talk about CRM, we talk about, well, who's getting the benefit out of it? Is it the management? Is it the salesperson? Well, in a startup environment, the manager and the salesperson are the one and the same, the founder. Yeah. So what are the main benefits that you feel a disciplined use of a CRM system gives you?
I'm going to quickly comment before on that CRMs are supposed to be pipeline management tools, not reporting tools, as you well know. Right? Yeah. But you're very right in that, in the sense that too many times they are taken into use as reporting tools. And then that's where the hate for the CRM systems come, because it doesn't serve the sales rep to fill in the extra things into the CRM because they're just for somebody else. They're not for them. So to anybody out there, please build your CRM as a pipeline management tool. If you're good in building that, you're going to get the numbers you need as a manager. But then the golden rules, the kind of the bare minimum in that, and what you do it and how you keep it intact is just keep it intact each day after each call. Obviously, as a founder, and this I've found out as well myself now, it's not that easy when you're doing tons of other things weekly. My pipe drive isn't always clean. I mean, if I was to show you my pipe drive now, you'd probably laugh right now. But have a weekly sesh. Like that's the 1 15-minute marker. Let's say put that at the end of the week. Let's say Friday at 4, Friday at 6, Friday at 8, wherever you want to do it, to kind of empty your working mind, clear your RAM, your cache, your whatever you want to call it, into there. Because then you're going to have a more relaxing week. I'm not saying fully relaxed, but you're going to have a more relaxing weekend, because you know that the activities you're supposed to be doing into sales are going to wait for you on Monday in the CRM system. And you don't have to remember things. Same thing applies obviously to other to-do lists Monday or whatever you want to use. But it's a really good thing to kind of empty your working mind at the end of the week and then have a proper rest period, whatever that may be for a founder, and then get back to it, right? So the same thing applies there.
Yeah. Sounds logical. Now, there's one other thing that I want to ask in relation to this. So if cold calling is the number one kind of thing causing headaches for people doing sales, I think the number 2 in my list would be note-taking. And I think that's the other part where people often get stuck. So what are your kind of initial advices on how do you effectively take notes?
I've had to really struggle on that myself as well. I sucked at taking notes, and I actually didn't take notes for a very, very long time in my sales career. I honestly didn't. And at some point, I had a country manager, really, really good one, fantastic guy. He taught me that, Mika, I see that you're not doing notes, but the customer appreciates you taking notes. So just write emojis in the paper if you feel like it. Just don't show the paper, but it like kind of asserts trust into the customer. And I was like, really? And just try it out. And yeah, it actually worked. But it actually started to help me kind of structure the way that I do notes, because as you've already seen now, I have this kind of 3 or 4 golden things in each process. And for me, the notes are like who was present and how, what was discussed, and what's going to happen next. you don't really need more than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to fill in some of these categories. Basically, any other thing is going to go into some of these categories. And this is also enough for, let's say that we work in a company and I'm sick on that day that I have a meeting. If I wrote just who was present, what was discussed, and what's going to happen next in the previous meeting, you can go into the meeting for me and you're going to be like, hey, you discussed this and you wanted to discuss this now, right?
Yeah.
And if that helps you, that also helps me as well. So keep it short, keep it to the point.
Yeah, very good. Now, early on in the startup's path, the founder or the founders are going to be the only ones doing the sales. So are there some things that the founders can start building to already kind of have some sort of a culture around sales by the time they start hiring people?
Very good question. I love that because yes, many times yes. I think sales recruitment is very often looked at as something easy, something like, hey, we need sales, let's just recruit somebody. And you couldn't be more wrong in that. A good sales rep, like a really good sales rep, loves a process. They want to come into a ready process. They want to ask you questions on, how many calls do I need to make this much money? They want to ask you those questions. They want to ask you which of our products makes the is the easiest to sell, right? They want to ask questions like, okay, I want to get to this income level. How do I get there? And if you don't have the answers to that, that just means you don't have the process in place. That's why you need to start doing it from day one. You're going to log stuff, which is what you asked. You're going to log stuff like, what did I say on the phone that got me the meeting? Just, French lines or whatever they call them in English. On this was it. I said this and they wanted to meet. I said this and they wanted to meet. And then in the meeting, same thing. As I said, who was present? What was discussed? What happened next? What was discussed? That's it. Those are the talking points. Log them in. You're going to see similarities there. And log in the numbers in the sense that, okay, it took me 15 calls to take 5 meetings. Cool. Part of the process. A solid number of meetings for a sales rep is 20 each month. It's enough. If you have a properly priced B2B product and offering, 20 meetings a month is more than enough. 20 quality meetings, which is 5 every week. And then on top of that, you have the follow-up meetings and all that. So log those things that would kind of help you build the process, which is prospecting, contacting, meeting, and then following up and all the way up into the sale. And what were the things that got you to the next step? Log those in. What were the things that got you to the next step? And you're not going to find those out without trying. And then you have a basic process. And then you can start to spar. Sales directors are very willing to spar with you. Reach out to them. Ask them like, hey, okay, I've looked at this. Can you give me feedback on what would you like to change? But then remember, all sales directors are different. Talk to 2, 3. Get their input. They love to do that, and they will give you time on that. And then you kind of see on how they look at what you've done. They're going to give you feedback on a very specific thing, or they're going to give you feedback on the whole thing. All of that is valuable. And then just adjust. You're never going to have the perfect process, but you can get close to it.
Very good. Really, really practical advice. I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So just shoot whatever comes to your mind first. So the best cold message you've ever seen, and why did it work?
Cold message.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, you put me on the spot here. I can't really remember one really good one. But I do remember, I don't remember exactly what the message was, but it was from Johannes Karjola from Trust Mary. But it was kokemuksia without feet back then.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think I need to meet with this guy.
All right, very good. Biggest mistake founders make in early sales?
That they don't do it.
If a founder has only 5 hours per week to focus on sales, what should they spend it on?
First half an hour on prospecting, pick 5 companies, then call those 5 companies. Then the ones that didn't answer, send them an email that you're going to call them again. And then at the last 5 hour, on the last hour of the 5 hours, call them all again if they didn't pick up, and then log that somewhere. And in between, you can just prospect for more companies while you're at it.
Very good. Most overrated sales metric.
Oh, Yeah, I'm gonna say calculating the percentage of answered calls and how that translates into meetings.
Okay. Most underrated one.
Meeting length compared to average deal size. I don't think anybody actually does that.
Okay. Very good. All right. Time to wrap up today's discussion. And here at GorillaCast, we always ask the 2 closing questions from our guests. So the first one, what do you know today that you wish you had known years ago?
1,680 things. First, I'm going to go deep with this and say, don't be so harsh on yourself.
That's a good learning. And then what could have helped you to move faster on your learning curve?
I'm again going to say empathy towards myself, because it would have allowed me to ask more questions, to ask for more help, that I don't need to solve everything by myself.
That's great. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mika.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. And I'll see you again sometime soon. Thanks.
Thank you.